Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this week's episode of Maximum Octane. This is your host, Kim Hickey. As usual, I'm going to say it again. I am super excited about my guest today because who wouldn't be excited about the people they get to pick, right? So I know it probably sounds redundant every week, but good golly. So for those of you listening, if you're ever a guest on my show and I don't tell everybody I'm super excited about you, that's not a good sign. Not a good sign. So, anyway, joining me today is Mr. Keith Katz. How are you today, Keith?
I am doing fantastic.
So, Keith, you are the owner and operator of Quality Service Center in York, Pennsylvania.
Yes, I am. Good old York,
E-
PA.
And so, you are responsible for keeping the vehicle safe in your area and doing repairs and maintenance and all of those things. So, we thank you for that. Caring and elevating the automotive industry. Sometimes it's like people look at people in the automotive industry like ambulance chasers or those kind of things, and it's like it almost like going for a root canal. It's not often that people are like, I'm so excited to get my vehicle serviced, but I know
Yep.
your customers are excited to see you and get their repairs and
It's like
maintenance.
I've had a customer or two say to me, this car picked a bad time to break down. And I said, is it ever a good time? Well, that's a good point. It's never a good time. But yeah, we keep them going.
You keep them going. That's wonderful. And I know you do a great job at your shop of really explaining things to your customers and educating them so they understand the why and how to better take care of their vehicles so that it doesn't pick a bad time to break down, right?
Right,
And
right.
part of that is having the right team and
Mm-hmm,
internal customers to take care of
mm-hmm,
your external customers. So you recently ran into something and had an experience with what we'll call a toxic employee. And
mm-hmm.
we're gonna call them Pats because just a very generic name could be used for anybody. So we'll go with Pat. So how many years have you been in business?
I've been in business for myself for 23 years. I've
23
been doing,
years.
yep. And I've been in the automotive field since 1981. So I don't know how many years that is, but it's a long time. Actually, I think that'd
I'm
be 41 years now.
I don't want you to say because I graduated in 84 and so I just don't even want to think about it. I conveniently block that out. The math, anything to do with the 80s, I'm like I just block out the math. I don't want to know. I don't want to
Yeah,
know.
I
So
got
for
you
sure.
there.
So here you hired uh we'll give or take a
Pat.
year ago, Pat,
Mm-hmm.
and Pat came to work and tell us the story.
Well, Pat came to work off of a recommendation of a friend. And as we all know, this is the time of in our lives where technicians are hard to find. Good technicians, you have to pay a premium for them. And this Pat came to me as a recommendation, and it was affordable. So I hired Pat, and I did the biggest no-no that you should never do, and I bypassed my usual process for interviewing, and I brought him on because a friend of mine said, this is a good guy, you need to hire him. So that's what I did. So then the first week, I think it was, it was the first week he was there. Probably the first day or two, I said to myself, "Oh, I don't think this is a good hire." There were just some little things, some inconsistencies, just I don't know, just it didn't sit right in my stomach. And by the end of that first week, I lost one of my previous employees uh, over Pat. This employee quit. It was an ugly quit, and he wouldn't really say why he quit. He just said, "I think it'd be better for me to move on." And I have
And
since
this was totally unexpected.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I watch and observe what goes on in the shop, and you think things are going well. Um, you see people talking and laughing, so you think it's okay. But several months after this other employee left, I finally got to go out to dinner with him, and I'm like, "Hey, what really happened here?" And that's when he explained to me that Pat was the whole reason that he left, and that's what drove him out. So I lost a good. I mean, that other employee was with me for like 3.5 years, so it wasn't like,
Wow.
yeah. So
And obviously they had a lot of respect for you and liked working for you, or they wouldn't have went out to dinner with you, right? When they
yeah, and that's the whole thing. I mean, at first there was no communication with me and him, but then he started sending me text messages and back and forth. And my wife even encouraged me. She said, "Why don't you go out to dinner with him, find out what's going on?" I'm like, "I'm not going out to dinner with him." I finally caved and I did it because wives always have the better ideas. And so I sat down and talked to him, and he was quite open. I tried to get him back as a employee, but he said at this point he's just going to stay where he's at. So I lost a tenured employee over Pat because of his toxicity.
and had you seen so within the first week you had like a hinky feeling, right? You saw some things that maybe were not what you were expecting. And
Hmm.
then at the time when your tenured employee left, you didn't know it was directly because of Pat.
I didn't know that part, but by that time I was like, I'm not really comfortable with this guy. But now, because of other circumstances at the shop, Pat was my only technician left. So you do what every owner does. You don't let them go because you need a technician. So you hold on to them and you start ignoring some things and turning aside to those items. And one of the things that he would do to me is he would come to me and he would say to me, "Hey, XYZ, whatever it is," and I'd be like, "Wow, I didn't see that, didn't know that." So I'd sit down and talk with my service advisor, and I'd say, "Hey, Pat said XYZ," and he said, "No, Pat told me ABC." And I'm like, so who's telling it? What's the truth here? And it became a thing where you couldn't believe anything he would say, and even if it was truth, you didn't know, was it really truth, or it just became this whole thing that you couldn't trust him. And that was one of the big things with a toxic employee. You can no longer trust them, and when that trust is broken, that's really where it needs to end. But again, you know I needed a technician, and if I let him go, guess who's in the shop all by himself? Me. So you just kind of continue to put up with things.
So you mentioned the description of toxic employee. We've all had them. We've all worked with them. We've all seen them. But do you want to describe to you what, in your words, what a toxic employee is?
How much time do I have to do that? um,
We
you
just
know,
have all day. No.
okay. Some sure signs of a toxic employee is, first of all, the trust. I mean, you can't trust anything that they're saying. Um, Another thing is that they never admit that they're wrong. Pat, he always had an excuse for everything. It was the part, it was the car, it was the weather, it was whatever, but it was never Pat, and that really bothered me. He would play mind games with you, very manipulative. He always had to be right, even when he was wrong. He always had to be right. We had that kind of joke going around. Hey, when the customer's wrong, remember, customer's always right. But I know he had to always be right. Everything that you would say or do, he would kind of twist it and manipulate it so it would benefit him. And there's no loyalty, because I could go into stories and stories about that. But there's so many things that a toxic employee has, but yet we some reason hold on to them because we think like we can't live without them. So I don't know how to wrap it all up into one easy sentence.
I think what you said is perfect. And that's one of the things I was so happy that you agreed to share your story is many times when there's somebody that's toxic. So listen, there's all different levels and degrees of employees gone wrong. Some of them, they just late all the time. They don't care. They don't, whatever. There's all different levels, but the truly toxic ones are so detrimental to your business. And they're almost professionals at it.
Hmm.
Many of them, at least most of the more toxic somebody is, the better that they are at their craft. And in this case, it was a technician. And I think that's part of their game, right? They make themselves appear invaluable because they excel at whatever skill that they have, that they go and do all these other things behind the scenes and we overlook it because, oh my gosh, they're so great at what they do, or they're generating so much sales, or we don't have to worry about comebacks or whatever it is. And they manipulate you into thinking that you can't be without them, right? And so it's like trying to think of the word just escape me because it makes me crazy just even thinking about them. And how often we put up with them, people
Right.
in our lives, and they kind of emotionally hold you hostage, right? And they hold your business hostage and everyone else. And then you find everyone in the shop or whatever business it is kind of walking on eggshells around them. And it's horrible because then they know the owner's not going to get rid of them because that's their, superstar, or the best biller, or the best customer service, or the best in sales. And then it everyone has to work around them and their idiosyncrasies and all of that. And
Yeah.
you did that for a long time. But how long did you have Pat there?
It was less than a year that he lasted.
Less than a year. I mean, we talk to people all the time, and 20 years they've had somebody like that, or 10 years, or 5 years, and they just didn't know because it happened gradually.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
started out like a superstar, and then all these little things started happening, and
Right.
the business and the people around them make little adjustments, little adjustments, little adjustments until it's like it's crazy. It's
I
crazy.
talked I talked with another shop owner that had a toxic employee, and he had this employee for 2 years. And I was like, how could you do that? And he said, his exact words, I was determined to change him. I was going to change him. And I'm all about grace and forgiveness and second and third chances. I get it. We all have our failures, but I I don't know what it would have taken to break this toxicity and change. I don't know what's deep rooted in his life that makes him that way. So to me, the best thing for me to do for the business and for my own health really was to um, have to part ways, and that's what we had to do. It wasn't a pretty party. I'll be honest, it wasn't pretty, but it was definitely necessary. Even when Pat left, he said to me, he said, "This has been the worst work experience of my life." And I'm like, I could sit here and brag about all the things we did for Pat, but I'm not going to do that. But it's like you look back and you're like, this is your worst, man. Holy smokes!
Wow, and this got so stressful, you even started having some health issues a little bit from it, right?
Yeah, well, you don't understand really what it does to you health wise. I was starting to have some severe back issues. I mean, some some pain. Every time I'd stand up from even sitting on the recliner at home, my wife would say, You look like an old man." Well, I guess I am, but she said, and so I was seeing the doctor and the chiropractor for this, and they couldn't find anything. They make adjustments and this and that. And there was just this sharp pain in my back. And within a week or two of Pat leaving, all of a sudden the symptoms started going away. And I was like, wow, can a person really affect your health that much? I had no clue. And how many other shop owners are out there with whatever ailments they have, or anything, the stress in their life, maybe migraines, maybe not being able to sleep at night, all because they feel like they need to keep this employee. And I get it. I was the same way. I so I you know it is what it is when you go through it. And I hope that this podcast will help others understand and see that you don't have to put up with this. You don't have to do this. And that's really why I decided to come forward, because, at first I didn't want to. I didn't want to stir the waters and ruffle people's feathers and all. But when I saw uh, on Facebook owners group page, several owners posting about these toxic employees, and I can't let them go because they've worked for me for 10 years or 15 years, or you know I'll have to go back out in the shop if I let them go. It's like, I get it, I understand, but it's time to move on and let them go.
So keeping them, it comes at such a cost. And sometimes we get blindsided by, well, they're generating X amount of revenue, or they're keeping me from having to go in and be at the counter or go out to the shop or whatever. So in your head, you sort of justify and say they're
Hmm.
doing these good things and they're generating revenue, but the behind the scenes cost to your health, the other, internal customers' health, losing two good employees, because you also had someone that was going to come and work for you and then met Pat and then said, no, thank you.
Yeah, and that was part of the struggle, going through this, looking for technicians, and they'd come in and they interview, and then they meet Pat, and you know one in particular, I pretty much had him hook, line, and sinker, had all the arrangements made and everything, and he called me up 2 days later and says, I don't think I can come work for you. And he didn't ever tell me why, but everything was going good until he met Pat. So I'm like, there's got to be something here. But again, if I let Pat go, guess who's out in the shop by himself? Looking back, I wish I would have done it earlier. But you always learn from your mistakes, and this was a big one that I learned from. And I've told several people, including my wife, my coach, and everything. I said, I'll never do this again. If someone comes in and I start getting those vibes, might be the nicest guy in the world, I'll let him go. I'm not putting myself through that again.
You got to trust your gut, right? Your instinct. You're that. You had mentioned something to me that it just broke my heart, because I know almost every business owner has been through it with somebody that they have that's toxic and they don't realize or don't have a label on it, or it's just that person you work with or that works for you that just makes everybody miserable and makes things 10 times more difficult. And you said you almost got like, would look forward to them calling in sick. You would be like,
Yeah, I mean, if he didn't show up one day, or he was off for, he took a 3 day long weekend one time, and it was just like the heavens opened up, and like, it just felt so good. And that's sad that while I tried to be a good boss to him, while I tried to do everything right, and even tried in some ways to, talk to him and say, you're a great tech, but we need to change some things. It just wasn't working. And so the few days off that Pat took just made me feel wonderful. It really did. Um, and the day after actually the night the night after I let him go, I slept so good. I really did. I gotta be honest. It was probably the best night's sleep I had in a long time. So yeah, you just, and I get it. I get why we do it. I understand, and so I'm not judging anybody else that might be listening to this and still has that employee that they're like, I wish I would let him go. I can't stand it. I mean, I'm sure a lot of us can say we've had employees that we've let go, and after we let them go, the other employees say, "Whew, man, glad you finally got rid of him." I've
not
heard
only the
that.
employees, yeah, the you'll hear it from your vendors and from your external customers and and then you're like, why the heck didn't everybody tell me all of this behind?
Yeah.
It's like almost shocking, but it's not. But how many people step forward and say, holy cow, if you didn't do that? Or how many people sometimes you didn't know how close they were to leaving and they come and say, if you didn't get rid of them or they didn't leave or whatever, however you want to word it, I wasn't going to be here any longer. I just couldn't take it.
Yep.
And
Well, I had
it's,
that with one of my technicians that I had hired. They had been with me 3 weeks, 4 weeks, somewhere around there, 4 or 5, I don't remember. And the day after I let Pat go, they came to me and said, "I don't think I could have worked for you much longer." And I was like,
wow.
"Wow, that was." And they're, I mean, granted, maybe their skill level isn't the same as Pat's was, but that really hurt in some ways that I had allowed that to affect other people around me. And so again, you're not. It's just, you got to look at everything that's being involved there with your other employees, like you said, your vendors. I never even thought about vendors. I don't. No vendor has come to me and say, "Wow, I'm sure glad you let Pat go," but maybe they're thinking it. I don't know.
Oh, I've had those calls when there's, it's like, and different, because they, mistreated the vendors or didn't speak to them properly, or they acted like they did to everybody else, to those people. And I was not aware of it, because the vendors, of course, want to service you and collect your money. So, they're not
Yeah.
going to come usually and say, hey, that employee you have is horrible. You
Mm-hmm.
need to get rid of them.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the signs that you have to look for, I mean, some of them you mentioned about toxic behaviors from the employee, but for yourself, when you start hating going into your own business, when you start being excited that somebody is not there for the day, when you see that the whole environment, if somebody's out, is more jovial and people are happier and they look there's so many little signs that we have to look
Mm-hmm.
for. And it's hard, and we put up with a lot of stuff, especially in today's world. And we could spend hours talking about the great resignation, and there aren't any good people out there to work, which there are good people to work. We have to just look harder for them. But people are clinging on, I think, more than ever, clinging on to people that they shouldn't. That's not, you know, abiding by your mission and vision, and they're not bettering the business, and they're not bettering your internal and external customers. And
Mm-hmm.
we're so desperate to have somebody to try to get the work out,
Yep.
because we feel like we're letting our external customers down. We don't. That, I think, we allow ourselves to get jammed up. And
Mm-hmm.
then some of the stuff they pull is gradual, and you don't realize it. It's they're like professionals at manipulating things, and they always manage to be, I think, at the right place at the right time, and make themselves look like the savior. They're always happy to point out what everybody else did wrong, and, oh, but don't worry, Keith, I fixed that for you. And you start thinking, oh my goodness, thank goodness I have Pat. All these other people are doing these things wrong, and Pat is taking care of it for me. And they are professional manipulators. So,
It it's funny. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
oh, you're not interrupting.
it brought back two points. That you say about, hey, I'm the savior. Look what I did for you. We were having a struggle with one of the vehicles here, and we just couldn't seem to pinpoint what was wrong with this and everything. And Pat came in one morning, and we always have our morning huddles, and he kind of like stood aside and everything. And you talk about walking on eggshells. Every day was like, okay, what's Pat going to do today? You didn't know. But anyway, he came in the one day, and I said, something bothering you? He goes, well, yeah, nobody thanked me. And I said, thanked you for what? He said, well, last night I took time on myself at home to look up this, and I found the problem, and no one thanked me. And I'm like, you didn't tell me till now, so how was I supposed to thank you? But it's the, here I am, savior of the world. Look what I'm going to do for you, and
Right.
you didn't thank me. And I was like, wow, that's rough. The other thing you said that really hit home was hate going to work. I can't tell you. I not hated going to work. I despised going to work. I really did. I lived for the weekends. I put up during the week and then on the weekends. And I'm the type of shop owner that a lot of times I would come into the shop like on Saturday morning and maybe tidy something up or move something around, or I enjoy being here by myself uninterrupted. And I would just do little things here and there, nothing big. I stopped doing that altogether because I hated coming into this building. I literally despised it. And once Pat was gone, and um, I forget, I had to come in to do something one weekend, and I was like, feels pretty good coming in here. No one here to bother me, and I can get this done and that done, and but i- i- it was so depressing going to work, and yet I kept saying to myself, I own this place. I mean, I'm the owner. Why do I hate coming to work so much? And you just, I don't know. Sometimes I think you just lose all common sense or something. I don't know what it is, but it was just crazy that you would just put up with that. I just put up with it the way I did.
I know that you're certainly not alone in that, and I think we've all been there. Any business owner has been in that position, and if you never have been, hats off to you and kudos, because you learned things excuse me, much quicker than I did.
Hmm.
But that, at the end of the day, we do have to remember that that is our business and we make the rules. And
Mm-hmm.
so many times we're afraid to say something, or it's just little things, little things, little things, and we let it pile up. And they're pretty good, those toxic employees, emotional hijackers, whatever you want to call them. They just start out with little things in the beginning, so it's not something big enough to write them up for, or big enough to, it's little tiny things that they start doing. And then by the time you realize what's happening, it's like, okay, now if you want to let them go, whatever, like legally, can you hadn't written them up, but how do you, some of this stuff is so little. And so
Mm-hmm.
you have to really take notes in the beginning and have those conversations, and make sure that any of your internal customers understand your mission, your vision, your pillars, your fundamentals, whatever your business goes by. And you have to have those guardrails there and the processes. And so when they do something out of there, and it's not something quote unquote bad enough to write them up for, or whatever, that you can say, gosh, Pat, I'm a little surprised that behavior, or how you just asked for, it's not really aligning with our mission and mission and vision, or again, whatever you call it. Let's talk about this. How can we make this more in alignment? How's another way we could have said that or mention that to follow our mission? And then it takes the emotion out of it, because you have something to refer back to and to look at and say, it's right here, it's all in here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything we need to follow the culture. So I know everybody's going to be wondering, are you still friends with a friend that recommended Pat to you?
Yeah. Fortunately, I'm good at letting business be business and friends be friends. And at first I was like, "Man, you're an idiot. I can't believe this." But we've talked, we've talked, and we both he doesn't. My friend doesn't see Pat the way I see Pat, and so we
Has
agreed to
Pat ever worked for your friend?
yes.
Wow. Okay.
And it was I can't say it was very manipulative. I don't know, I wasn't there. I've heard stories, so I'm not going to say anything, but my friend and I have agreed to disagree and continue on as friends, so, and I'm okay with that. I really
That's
am.
awesome.
But
At least it wasn't like your brother-in-law or something. A lot of business owners get into trouble with that when they hire their brother-in-law or sister-in-law or father,
yep.
in-laws or something. And then it's like, boy, they're really in a pickle, because if they let them go, a family member, then it's going to ruin Thanksgiving. Or, but at the end of the day, it's your business and you get
Yep.
to make the rules. And
Mm-hmm.
as hard as, you know, entrepreneurs and the backbone of America, work to have businesses and to provide jobs for people and help the community and do all of that, they don't deserve to hate going into their own business. You don't deserve it.
All
And
right.
I hope more people realize that it's not a punishment. It shouldn't be a punishment to own a business and help provide for other families.
Yeah, I
So
know one of the things that um, I anytime I would confront him, he wouldn't take no for an answer. I mean, that's a hard clue right there. And I could I finally, had to throw him a weight, not physically, but I finally said, look, this is my business. I own the business, and this is how we're going to do it. But he would still want to argue, and he wouldn't take no for an answer, and he would never stop arguing, and he would argue his same point over and over and over and over. And I would try to interact and interrupt and say something, and Pat just would never let me get 2 cents in. Um, right there, insubordination, most people would say, and I get it, but I was in a different frame of mind back then. So,
they wear you down though, and anybody that says I wouldn't tolerate that, I mean, they wear you down. They're professionals at what they do. They've perfected their
yep.
craft because they've done it at so many places. And it's sort of like before I became a parent, I was very good at being like, oh, I would never let my kid do that. And oh my God, look at what their kid is doing. And
Hmm.
I wouldn't let them eat candy or soda, whatever it is. And then, boy, you have and some days you're exhausted, and then they just be like, mommy, 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 please, please. And I'd be like, no, 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 no. And then finally, just in exhaustion, end up being, not often did they get away with it, but every now and then, it just was like anything to keep the peace or to make quiet. And I think that's where we get to in the business when that's happening. It's like you're almost willing to do anything to have a calm and peaceful moment, which is not a good feeling at your business.
Yeah. One thing I would say to anyone out there that maybe knows an owner that's going through this and they don't see it. Boy, I hope I can get through this part. But in the midst of all this that was going on, I had a friend from my 20 group reach out to me. And he didn't know what I was going through. He just called and said, hey, buddy, what's going on? And I unloaded on him. I really did. I said, here's what's going on. A lot of tears were shed because of the first time someone reached out to me. And the funny thing about it is, that was a Friday that he called me. And Sunday morning I woke up and I said to my wife, I said, I had this really weird dream last night. She said, what was it? I said, I had a dream that Andrew came to the shop on Monday morning and surprised me. And Andrew lives in Tennessee. I'm in Pennsylvania. It's far-fetched. It's just a dream, whatever. Monday morning, I'm at work, 10:30 in the morning. My customer service lady comes out. She says, there's someone here to see you. And I said, I can't talk right now. I'm busy. She goes, no, I think you want to come out here. All right, give me 10 minutes. I'll be out. I was upset because I'm like, I don't want to be interrupted. I have to work in the shop right now. Don't interrupt me. Cleaned my hands up, walked out, and there was Andrew. And
Oh
I
my
was like,
gosh, it's amazing.
I was just like, and I told him about the dream. I'm like, you can't even imagine this. And he came up for 2 days, not to condemn me or to be mad at me or tell me what I'm doing wrong. He just came up to be a friend. And phew, it still gets emotionally to me. I'm sorry.
Oh
But
no,
but it was what I needed at that time. So I say to other shop owners, you see someone struggling with it, be that friend, because it could mean the world of difference to them, and it meant a world of difference to me. All right, I'm good.
well, thank you for sharing. I'm glad. I'm like, am I wearing waterproof mascara?
I know I am, so we're good. So yeah,
I
be that friend.
thank you for sharing that. What a beautiful story. I'm gonna have to get Andrew to come on maybe and see how he knew to reach out and all of that. And it is so important because people are going through so much today and at any time, and you just don't know. And how amazing of a friend that Andrew noticed that you just needed somebody in your corner.
It was life changing at the time for me. It really was, because you think, first of all, many shop owners think they're going through this alone. I got this person. I'm the only person that has dealt with this, and nobody understands. There's a lot of us out there that understand, and I guess now I can raise my hand and say I understand. Now, I don't want to see anyone else go through this, but it's like you said, Kim. They are professionals at it, and they know what to do to manipulate you
They
and
do.
to bully you. And again, I hear shop owners say, "Well, I'm the shop owner. I'm in charge. I'm not a." Yeah, it happens subtly and quietly at first, and then before you know it, it's full blown, and you're done.
It does, and that's I think their genius is if only they use their superpowers for good, right? Because their genius is those little small things, and so you start making small adjustments until it's bigger and bigger and bigger. And we laughed when we talked about it before about getting a new suspension on your vehicle or a new clutch or something. It little bit starts to wear out. You make slight adjustments in your driving to accommodate that, and then all of a sudden that becomes your norm, is driving like that. And then when you get new ones, a new clutch or a new suspension, you're like, holy cow, can't believe I was driving like that. I
Yep.
just so I so appreciate you telling your story, and I just love the part also about Andrew. And I hope for me there's so many takeaways from this call. And just at the end of the day, we just need to be good humans, right? Good humans to each other. And so if you're one of those toxic employees, knock it off. Use your superpowers for good instead of evil. And if you see somebody struggling with that on the other side, just be their friend, be there for them. And don't, you're not stuck. It's your business and you get to make the rules. So
Yep, that's exactly it. Exactly it.
trust your gut.
Go with your
Don't
gut
listen to your
instinct.
friends.
Yeah.
Don't listen to your dang friends. Just trust your gut and follow your
uh,
processes, right? So it's so
yeah.
easy to look back, right, and go, holy cow. And you hear the same thing about anything, a friendship gone wrong, a marriage gone wrong, a whatever. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I lived like that for all those years.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
gosh, these people they know what they're doing. They know
The
what they're
the
doing.
the drama that Pat brought into our business, it's like, I think you said it earlier. It's like a movie that you're watching, and you watch the movie and you're like, how can you be so stupid? And don't do that. Don't go in that room. You know that they're in there with the chainsaw or whatever it is,
Right.
and yet, we sit back and we don't play out the movie in our own lives sometimes, the way that we would do it when we're watching it and we're maybe a spectator, so to speak. But um, as a shop owner, we know what we're supposed to do. Um, if you don't know what you're supposed to do, obviously you haven't been through all the training at ATI, or you're not listening. I don't know which one it is. And it's funny because this whole podcast got started because I went on Facebook, and I apologized to all my coaches, trainers, and everybody for being that person that didn't listen to their advice. And it's you get to that point, and I'm sorry I did, but I'm glad I did, because I feel like I'm a better man and a better owner because of it. So sometimes it's the
My
hard
goodness,
things you
nothing
go
to
through.
apologize for. And you
Yeah,
probably wouldn't have realized how truly amazing Andrew was, even though you knew he was. I mean, so there's a lot of wonderful things that came out of this. And
exactly.
we gotta learn from our lessons. And the trick is to not repeat them too many times. Try to learn the first time. I'm not always good at that. Sometimes it takes me a few and I go, gosh, dang it. Why did I do this again? I
Yeah.
know better.
Yeah. Well, I hope I don't. I hope I don't ever
I'm
do
sure
this
everybody
again.
will be watching like a hawk, and your wife included, saying, no,
Yep.
we're not doing that again. Here's the signs.
Exactly. So.
So you need to have your little print out your list of the toxic employees when you're interviewing and just be like, hey, do I see any of that, Joe?
Oh, trust
Thank
me,
you.
it'll become part of the process.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your story today. And everybody's been there. And if you are in that now, get out of it, get out, reach out to somebody, reach out to us, call somebody, phone a friend, say, hey, I feel stuck. I really don't know what to do. And how do I turn the page? So thank you again for your time. I know you're super busy, so I really appreciate it. And everybody, stay
Welcome.
safe, make good choices, and stay inspired. And we'll be back next week.